what do you know about Ponce de Leon?
Well, I do know the fact that he was one of the first that was from France that was coming in over here.
Yeah, so as far as I know, the Fountain of Youth was one of the main goals of many early Floridian explorers.
I believe he was an explorer, and he was from Europe, and he was searching for something for the Fountain of Youth in the United States.
I actually don't know that much about Ponce de Leon.
For many, Juan Ponce de Leon and his 1513 expedition are something of a mystery. In the popular imagination, Ponce de Leon is remembered as a man in search of riches and fame. His legacy is tied to the idea that his first expedition was fueled by the desire to find gold and a mythical fountain of youth that could turn old men young again. Though the draw of such a story is understandable, the legends that surround Ponce are far from the truth, which in many ways offers a far more complex and interesting narrative about the man who discovered Florida. Ponce de Leon first came to the Americas in 1493 with the second expedition of Christopher Columbus. His role in suppressing the revolt of the Taino people earned him the favor of the Spanish crown, who appointed Ponce as the first governor of Puerto Rico in 1509. Ponce de Leon's appointment would come to be contested by Christopher Columbus's son Diego, as Columbus's 1492 contract with the crown stipulated that Columbus's heirs would have the right to succeed him in title and office. After a lengthy legal dispute, Ponce was forced to relinquish his role as governor in 1511. Left with no title, Ponce sought a new way to amass wealth and power. In 1512, he petitioned King Ferdinand for a license to discover and settle the island of Bimini, hoping to claim the new land for the Spanish crown and secure for himself the position of governor of Bimini. In February of 1512, Ponce was officially granted a license which gave him exclusive rights to whichever land he discovered for a period of 3 years and lifetime governorship of the colony that would be established. Successful in his attempt to regain power, Ponce returned to Spain in 1514 to be knighted, reinstated as governor of Puerto Rico, and authorized to lead another expedition to Florida with the goal of establishing a permanent settlement. It bears mention that no account of the Fountain of Youth was detailed in the 1512 or 1521 contracts between Ponce de Leon and the Crown. Surely if the goal of his expedition was to find a Fountain of Youth, the conditions of its discovery would have been outlined in one of the two contracts. The document goes into great detail about tax breaks for members of the expedition, the treatment of possible native populations, and even the height of potential residences, but still no mention of a fountain. It isn't until nearly 20 years after the explorer's death that Gonzalo Fernández de Oviedo connects Ponce and the Fountain of Youth. In his 1535 Historia General y Natural de las Indias, Oviedo argues that Ponce's vanity and naive trust of the native Indian population led him to spend 6 months searching for the mythical fountain at great financial and human cost. He went to discover the Fountain of Bimini, which the Indians publicized as turning the old young. And this I have seen, not with regard to the improvement of strength, but in the weakening of the brain. In his 1601 Historia de los Hechos de los Castellanos, Antonio de Herrera, another chronicler of the time, echoes Oviedo's portrayal of the Ponce voyages. Though Herrera's work was based on a now lost log of Ponce's expedition, it makes no mention of where in the log he found the link between Ponce and the Fountain of Youth. The lack of historical evidence supporting the idea has done little to dampen the public's fascination with Ponce and the fountain. Scores of movies, books, and cities have perpetuated the story. Ponce and the Fountain recaptured the American imagination in 1831 with Washington Irving's Voyages and Discoveries of the Companions of Columbus, and the new generation was familiarized with the myth in 2011 with the Stranger Tides edition of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. What is it about the Fountain of Youth that has enabled it to capture our collective imagination? What is it that drives thousands of tourists to make the pilgrimage to places like the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park for a taste of water that smells like sulfur?
Probably because of, the meaning of the Fountain of Youth. I think a lot of people fantasize over the symbolism of it. And, if you find it, maybe there's something that you could find for yourself. And it's also just a good fantasy that people have over the history,
Well, I think people think it's a really interesting concept. It gets a lot of attention.
I think people tend to want a good story. And it may not actually be true, but I do think we should look into the actual truth of the Fountain of Youth and Ponce de Leon's actual voyage over here.
The truth can be tricky. The truth can be hard to understand. Sometimes having a fairy tale makes it easier to connect with people that seem so far away. maybe the best thing we can do is embrace the myth. Maybe that's how we get closer to telling the full story.